Yes, our next guest is an excellent conservative congressman from Michigan, and Michigan shares a great deal of woe with California. But really what's important today is he is a Gibson playing guitar guy for the Second Amendment's, the House of Representatives Congressional Band. Thad McCotter, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
So I got to know about the Second Amendment. What do you guys play?
Oh, it's a congressional band, plays for charities, plays for our troops.
Yeah.
It plays anything from country to rock. It's very eclectic. You know, I generally rock out when I play in the Screaming Lemurs, which is kind of my brother's band.
All right. I know you played for the Iowa caucuses. You played with Huckabee, too, didn't you?
Yeah, he sat in. I remember it was the same time Governor Huckabee was in Bass Player magazine. I mean, he's very good.
Apparently so. And, you know, something else that I just tripped to, do you really use Led Zeppelin lyrics in some of your speeches?
Well, I did it once on the House floor because everybody was saying the same thing over and over, and the Democrats were saying the same tired tax and spend, so I just figured I'd use The Song Remains the Same and just took some song titles, ripped them together.
Nicely done, sir. So we have this Gibson story now, and I can't tell you how pleased I am that it's gotten to your ears and the other congressmen as well. First of all, just your reaction on what you're hearing.
Well, as I said at the time when I first found out about it, it's one more reason big government doesn't rock. I mean, you're looking at American artisans, and as you rightly point out, having the federal government come in and tell them they'd be better off if they let people in Madagascar or elsewhere do the work is insane. It's outsourcing by government fiat from an administration that claims to oppose it. And then when you hear about the musicians who now can't travel with their guitars for fear of losing them and never being able to get them back. And as you know, anybody who owns a guitar, these are very personal items.
Yes.
You do not want to take, now you can't take it with you to entertain, you can't take it with you if you have a gig, for fear of losing it to some government bureaucrat. It's insane.
Yeah, it kind of is. And the idea that the part that seems to stick out, besides what it does to American labor, how it challenges Gibson and their success, and the legal bills are now incurring for the privilege of staying in legal limbo. But for the Department of Justice to interpret foreign law when the countries in question are saying no law broken, I quite frankly, I've never really heard of that before. I don't even understand the process. Do you?
No, but we're continuing to see out of this administration and trying to pander to every type of radical special interest as they can. And this is just another attempt on their part, for the same types of things that help keep water out of the valley, to pander to the radical environmentalists by interpreting laws and applying them to a company like Gibson. Now, one of the things that I do find interesting, though, is that it's also showing artists exactly why big government is such a problem for people, not just entrepreneurs, but even creative entrepreneurs such as musicians.
Yeah, truly. I hope that message gets through, because you talk about radical ideas and radical agendas, and then you have a guy like Henry Juskowitz from Gibson who bent over backwards, despite his apparent political views, bent over backwards to work with Rainforest Alliance, Greenpeace, and the Forest Service and all that to be compliant. He invited them in to make sure his T's were crossed and his I's were dotted. I mean, who does that if they don't? Who wants Greenpeace over their shoulder if they don't have to have them?
Right. It shows that they have concerns about conservation. Obviously, their wood products and a lot of the stuff that goes into the fretboards. So they have a very important interest in making sure that they comply so that they can continue production, continue to put out great quality guitars that they do. And by being open and trying to work with individuals, unfortunately, we've seen where this has gotten. I would hope that those groups that they work with will be pushing back on the Department of Justice to leave Gibson alone.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this, and this is where it gets a little political. By the way, we're with Congressman Thad McCotter on KMJ. Congressman, Fender, Martin, Epiphone, all doing, I'm assuming, the same thing, importing the same basic kinds of rare hardwood products, left alone, notably Fender, who is a pretty large contributor to the Democratic Party.
Yeah, but Fender also contributes to Republicans.
Okay.
And I would hope that what we're not going to see is now an extension of what the wrong that was imposed upon Gibson, now transferred to Martin or transferred to Fender or to anybody else. And I think this is one of the great places where we can bridge what is often considered an unbridgeable divide between Telecaster players and Les Paul players. In support of Gibson.
So we're not going to solve Democratic-Republican problems. We're going to solve Telecaster-Gibson problems.
That's often a wider chasm, man.
Yesterday when we first announced the Guitar Jam out here, the one Fender guy, boy, he couldn't find enough things wrong with this idea just because we weren't including Fender.
Well, I'm a Fender guy myself, but I'll borrow a Les Paul from somebody and come out and do it.
All right, that's good. And I like your critique on our idea of having this group jam where we're hopefully getting a couple thousand Gibsons out here to play us one song at the same time. You know, you guys, Congressman Nunes, Congressman Blackburn are working on this. Hopefully you get more working with you. And that's what you do, and that's how you get it done. Are we doing the right thing on our end, on the We the People end, to shame these people and or at least get the spotlight on to provide a chance to be shamed?
Yeah, well, I think that putting the spotlight on it is very helpful. I don't know that you can shame a federal bureaucrat, but at least it's worth an attempt. And I would say the one thing about your thousands of guitars idea is just make sure you don't put one in Nunes' hands because he can't play for a lick. Yeah,
that's what I heard. Where would you put him? Newbie? Wannabe? Joker?
As a musician, I think Devin would probably be closer to Davy Jones of the Monkees than anybody.
Well, see, and that leads to the argument that's raging right now as to whether or not the song, Congressman, should be Smoke on the Water, because while it isn't all that wonderful or relevant to what the message we're trying to send, it's the first song everybody learns. And maybe that's where Congressman Nunes still is.
Well, he could play a mean tambourine, and I think you might be on to something with the Deep Purple because you don't want to do something like Let It Rock because all you do is have everybody playing a lead.
Oh man! Or with Congressman Thaddeus McCotter, I have to ask. When you say a guy could play a good tambourine in the music world, is that about as close to calling somebody a girly man as you can?
Oh, I don't know. I think that Devin's performances speak for themselves.
So what are you guys going to be working on now? I get the word from Devin's office that, legislation is taking longer and longer to get through. Is that what you guys are going to work on to try to change the Lacey Act or introduce something new?
Yeah, our offices are getting together. We're obviously going to work in coordination with Representative Blackburn, Tennessee, and make sure that we can find ways, I would think, to make sure that companies that comply in good faith are not pushed around, and that guitar owners who comply in good faith aren't subject to having their guitars taken from them by the bureaucrat. So there are two key issues right there that we can try to deal with.
You spoke about that worry before, Congressman, about people having their guitars taken from them. Has anything like that happened yet?
I think that there's been instances of them where they have. And so what we also are going to have to do is find individuals who've had that happen to make sure that, A, we can try to help them get their stuff back, but B, to prevent it from happening in the future. Because a lot of them have been very concerned about carrying. We've seen it in the instance of not just guitars, but there's also concerns about pianos, where if you don't have the provenance of the instrument, as they could be confiscated if you try to travel internationally.
Oh, my. Could you explain a little bit more what happened to the Lacey Act in 2008? How was it changed?
Well, I don't know that it was changed. I certainly don't think that the application of the foreign law and the utilization of that to promote the artisans and the outsourcing, I think what they were trying to attempt to do with the Lacey Act and with the changes in the Lacey Act was to make sure that you can't violate another country's environmental laws as opposed to their protectionist laws.
Yes.
And I think that that's what you're seeing when you talk about what the Department of Justice is saying in its pleadings or elsewhere, that if you had a Madagascar, do it. And I would also like to add that despite the fact I play in a band called the Screaming Lemurs, I have no bias towards Madagascar.
Way to be up on your southeastern African zoology, sir. That's fantastic.
And vanilla beans too, man.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good
vanilla beans.
That's a good smell. Hey, is it worth my time, anybody's time with a microphone or a mouthpiece or a pretty good blog to point out that the Department of Justice possibly has more important things to do than worry about ebony from Madagascar when Madagascar is okay? I'm thinking, I don't know, terrorism, illegal immigration, little things like that.
Yeah, you might want to do that. Clearly, you want to do that so that we can continue to have Gibson guitars. We can continue to find musical instruments produced here by American artisans and played by American musicians. and also around the world. But you also have to remember the Department of Justice is that from a lot of the things that you've seen this administration's Department of Justice do, you might be better off just asking them to stop, cease and desist doing insane things in the first place, and not limit it to just simply guitars.
It remains to be seen how big this Gibson example becomes and, how it influences them. But Fast and Furious is really getting big now. We now have email linking at least White House staffers, if not the White House itself, to knowledge of these guns being done. Do you think Holder can survive this?
Holder serves at the pleasure of the president. We'll see if the president wants to relieve him of his responsibilities. But the real question is that since he was appointed by the president, how much of the same type of ideology do they share, and how much would the president give credence to the types of decisions that Mr. Holder makes, whereas other individuals, especially the line officers, as we saw in the Fast and Furious, were arguing against this from day one.
You could probably comment on that better than I do. How much do you think Eric Holder holds the same kind of ideals and principles as the president?
I think that the Attorney General is one of the key positions that a president appoints who shares his philosophy or ideology.
Yeah, the Bobby Kennedy example, obviously. All right.
Or for your Democrats, John Mitchell. It's the same thing.
Oh, I had forgotten about John Mitchell. Yeah, you're right. Congressman, what else could we be doing out here? What kind of help do you need from us?
I think we just continue. What you're doing out there to shine the spotlight on it is great. If you can continue to keep attention on it, and if you can continue to kick out the jams about this issue, I think we'll be able to start working on it in Washington. We'll have the wind behind us, at least, to try to get something done through the House, which I think is a very receptive place. But when you get to the Senate, you're going to need, I think, both of your California senators on board. I think we're going to need the artistic community to talk to them about why this is very difficult for musicians that play Gibsons and that are worried about their instruments.
That leads me to believe that maybe we'll see larger jams than the one we have planned, more on a national scale from prominent musicians. Have you heard anything about anybody of name or note that's already ginning up on this, or is it a little bit too early?
I think it's a little early, although, people like Nugent, he likes to play Gibsons.
Mm-hmm.
You got every musician at some point in the recording industry has had their hands on a Gibson, and the reputation of the company is stellar.
Yes.
So I would think that the artistic community, especially the upscale ones who get to travel to gigs internationally, would be very concerned about this, or have the money to go get some of these vintage guitars, or to have them restored. Should be very concerned about them.
Last question, Congressman. And this is probably the most important question I'll ask you, what can be done to give a sense of rhythm to Devin Nunes?
Oh, that's a very probably some Portuguese wine.
Excellent job. Congressman, thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
All right, thanks.
All right, Congressman